Okay. Happy Sunday. It's Shelby Long, the twice exceptional mom, and I'm so excited to be here with another twice exceptional mother, attorney April Kelly Neal. And today we're going to talk about something that's been on both of our minds and on a lot of Americans' minds, which is the proposed autism registry that RFK Jr. has suggested as the Director of Health and Human Services. And there are definitely some concerns that we have moving forward with the proposed autism registry. There are many questions about privacy, patient rights, HIPAA, and it could probably even go into FERPA depending on how you're looking at it, and just going from there. But before we get into that, I want to play a short little snippet of what RFK Jr. has said about autism and individuals with autism and debunk some of the things that he said as well, and then go from there. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Can you hear it and see it?
Autism destroys families, but more importantly, it destroys our greatest resource, which are our children. These are children who should not be suffering like this. These are kids who, many of them were fully functional and regressed because of some environmental exposure into autism when they're 2 years old. And these are kids who will never pay taxes. They'll never hold a job. They'll never play baseball. They'll never write a poem. They'll never go out on a date. Many of them will never use a toilet unassisted. And we have to recognize we are doing this to our children, and we need to put an end to it. This is an individual tragedy.
And I'm going to stop that right there. And that snippet was from WKYC Channel 3. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but he said a lot of different things about whether they would have opportunities in life, whether they would need a lot of care as individuals, just a lot of things. He said it was something that we are doing to our children, and it's a well-known fact that RFK Jr. as well as some other people believe that autism is caused by getting vaccinated. And because if you notice, he said like age 2, and that's already been disproven, because the person who said that, they pretty much cited themselves for that topic and everything and the research for that. So that's not true. I think a lot of people have equated autism with the vaccines because they start noticing things around the same time. But what I was told when I took psychology was correlation is not necessarily causation. And
Yeah.
just because two things may be happening at the same time, it doesn't mean that one thing is causing the other thing, right? And so we're going to dive into some of the things that he said and also some of the legalities related to that. So again, I've got attorney April Kelly Neal here with me, and we're going to have a conversation about this proposed autism registry and some of the viewpoints that RFK Jr. and some other misinformed people may have about autism, so we can try to make sure that people are well informed. They know truly what the symptoms of autism are, how autism is caused. It's not something that we're doing to our children environmentally. There's research that shows that it's genetic. And also going forward, how we can continue to protect autistic individuals, because there's a lot of stereotyping said in that snippet with RFK Jr. And I think I've been a teacher for 20 years. I've taught several children who have autism and continue to meet them. I haven't met any that needed assistance toileting, some that could also write poetry. They're some of the most brilliant minds of our age are actually autistic individuals. So I would like for us to dive into that and the legalities of this proposed autism registry with attorney April Kelly Neal.
Yeah, the biggest concern that I have about all of this, well, we've seen this before.
Right. It's giving World War II. It's got a little bit of Nazism to it. I mean, I don't know a nicer way to put it. It is what it is when you start dividing people up and pointing out differences and saying why one group is a danger or at risk or either is inferior to another group. That's always very concerning.
It is. And one of the things that really concerns me is, if you've got this, if you want to do this autism registry, then obviously people are going to have to be diagnosed
Hmm.
with that, you know, with autism. So is this going to have a chilling effect on people seeking uh, a diagnosis and treatment or therapies for their autism? I mean, I think the answer to that is yeah,
Yes.
probably would. I mean, it's terrible. I mean, people would be. Um, I mean, I know it would be very scary to think that you would go on a list. So I
Right.
would
And
I would think a lot of people would avoid getting the treatment that they need. That's not
right.
good.
I think even in town, like in Macon, I think a lot of people primarily go see Dr. John's is where most people go to, and the waiting list to be seen by him is like several years long, is my understanding, and then it just makes you wonder, okay, so then are they going to go into a doctor's office like his and try to take his files and take his information, and then after they've exhausted all that information, then are they going to go into the list of people who are seeking to be evaluated to go find out things about them. And then also it makes me wonder, like if you think about the types of things that are evaluated at the psychiatrist's office, like what's next? Are they going to look at people who have ADHD, ADD? Are you going to look at people who have dyslexia? Are you going to go where, I guess, where is the line drawn? So if you were giving advisement to a parent, let's say they found out that, their child had autism, and then they were worried about the government using that information against their child, and adding it to their registry, what would be some things you would suggest for them to do to protect themselves and protect their child's data beyond HIPAA, which it seems like is about to be violated?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, yeah, I would just not give it to them. I mean, there's no reason for them to have it. I mean, and it's a violation of the law that the government doesn't have a right to that information. But, from what I've seen, we've got an administration now that really is kind of lawless.
Right.
So it is scary. Like, if you didn't give them that information, would they retaliate? I mean, who's to say, even if you didn't, if they asked for that information and you didn't give it to them, are they going to put pressure on physicians from now on and just circumvent even asking you? I mean, I think it's there. He's really going about this the wrong way because, if you want to research something, to try to make improvements, great. I mean, but there's a voluntary clinical trial process for that. Like, we don't have to have like a registry,
Right.
and it also makes me think, about the whole eugenics thing. Are we going to start putting people on a list, and then are we going to start sterilizing them? I mean, we already know how much they don't respect
Right.
uh,
Rights, people's rights.
bodily autonomy of women, especially. So that's terrifying. So
And
yeah,
so,
I would. You know what? I'd be tempted to say, yeah, he's got the nonverbal autism. So yeah, we're not disclosing anything.
right. And then what about, like you did mention, you took it to another space. I was interested, like with the doctor's office, would they be able to say, well, I took the Hippocratic oath to do no harm. So this is something that I feel will harm my patients. And then if if they do that, I guess, how could they protect themselves moving forward? Because I agree with you, there's a lot of lawlessness, it seems, because I think it was recently like a judge was arrested for something. And I guess, people want to do the right thing, but I think also, there are some people that are a little bit fearful about um, what may follow as a result of them pushing back against the administration and some of their initiatives that do seem to violate personal and human rights.
Yeah, and I mean, we've already seen that with doctors and the whole abortion issue. I think there was a doctor, I think in New York, that prescribed um, medical abortion pills to somebody in
The
a different state.
RU46. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think doctors are going to be caught in the middle in this whole scenario. Should he follow through with this plan to do a registry? Yeah. But I sure, you know, doctors do have a good lobbying group. So I'm really hoping that they'll step up, but it's scary watching the landscape now because we kind of know how this would play out a little bit.
Right. I almost wonder, like, if they would start, and I don't want to give them ideas, but I almost wonder if they would start with people who are getting like government assisted insurance, like when you talk about Medicare, Medicaid, and those types of things, if that would be a place where they try to like blur the lines, and making it accessible. I also wonder, as a public school teacher, because there are some children who were served because of that category based off them having autism symptoms, even though the school district can't officially diagnose. Like, would they start, trying to hold up funds for schools who don't share that information, even though that clearly would be a violation of FERPA?
Yeah. And, think about the chilling effect it has on a person seeking medical treatment for autism. But think about it would probably have a chilling effect on parents seeking to have their child evaluated for an autism eligibility.
Mm-hmm.
And that would just be a disaster for the school system, which is, you know, not
And
great already. I mean, the landscape with education is
yeah,
kind of
and I mean,
already
it
a
doesn't help that
disaster.
he's tried to destroy I won't say destroy, let me use the correct terminology, try to dismantle the Department of Education. I know it's been put on pause as of right now, but just, I guess, from a legal standpoint, I guess as individuals and as a community, what are some of the things that we can do to get our legislators and other people to like push back against some of these um, initiatives?
Well, I think one thing that we could do is kind of look at what other countries are doing with autistic people. They really are, they bring a lot to the table, actually. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they really do. I remember recently reading an article where Israel, they actually recruit people with autism because one of the characteristics is they are so hyper focused on things that that particular characteristic of autistic people is something that that particular army really values, but we don't value
Mm-hmm.
differences in people very much. If you don't, if you're a round peg and they want to pound you in a square hole, I mean, it just, we should look at things that other countries are doing as far as how they treat people with autism.
Right. And
I think we could learn from other countries.
I think for sure we can learn from them and how they're um, not vilifying people who have the condition, because that's definitely what is starting to occur here. I think also, I also wondered, like, how do you better educate people who are supposed to be in charge? Because there was a lot of pushback on his statements from various parent groups about autism. Um, Even, NPR, The Guardian, I'm just looking, New York Times, like all these different people like have pulled a research and, to basically go up against, what he's saying because it's a mischaracterization of 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 this diagnosis. And also, I think the way he described it in that video clip, it takes away from the idea of there being a spectrum. The whole thing with it is that there is a spectrum. It looks very different. It doesn't necessarily look the same on each person. And there are different, there are some people who are low need, and some people who are high need. So to say that, no child with autism can toilet independently is wild to me. Or to say that they'll never pay taxes. Everybody in America pays taxes. If you go buy a pack of gum, you're paying taxes. Um, I just don't know how how you go against people who seem bound and determined to to double down on wrong thinking.
Yeah, and that's the really scary part about putting someone like him in charge. Um, I mean, you don't have to be smart, but you've got experts out there that can fill you in on what autism is about. I mean, it's been researched for years. You've got experts. Talk to them before you go out and say something stupid like that. I mean, it's just ridiculous what he said. I mean,
Yeah.
it's he obviously doesn't know anything about autism or and hasn't even bothered to learn. And honestly, the way he spoke about it is sort of, I guess, and my kids are grown now, but my son has autism, and it just seemed like the school just tried to limit what he could do after he got the autism diagnosis. And I'm like, listen, there's nothing wrong with his brain
Brain.
functioning. Like,
Right. His
he doesn't
intelligence
have
is there.
intellectual disability. He has the capacity for learning. It's just a different a way of learning. So the way he's talking about people with autism is just it's alarming. And we a lot of us know about Temple Grandin, and for those of you who don't know,
Yes.
there is a movie
She's amazing.
about her. She's a person with autism, and I think it was fairly severe. I don't know what level she was at, but she got her PhD
Hmm.
and that kind of thing. And I used to give those that movie to his teachers so they could see, like, just because he has autism doesn't mean he doesn't have potential. Because I got the sense from some of his teachers, not all of them, that they had just written him off, like he just wasn't worth
Yes.
spending any time on. It's crazy.
I agree. I think that's still, and I know your children are older than mine, but I think that's still a big part of it in education now, is that even the teachers and paraprofessionals and even administrators, they don't 100% understand, or, they don't get autism. They don't get it. And I've had to, I've made it a point, particularly this school year, because this was the first year I was in school with my son, um, to make sure I really, really thanked and showed appreciation towards the teachers and paraprofessionals who could see duality in him, who could see that two things can be true at the same time. Like, he may have, autism spectrum disorder symptoms, like being overwhelmed with sensory issues at times, and being overly stimulated and maybe having like a negative response to certain stimuli. But at the same time, recognizing, oh, this little boy is smart. He came into kindergarten reading, and there's some kids that don't know any letters, don't even recognize their name. And I made sure I told them, like, I'll say it, and I just so appreciative of my son's teacher, his three, his para that he kept, Miss Askew and others, and his caseworker, Miss Colson. They just worked really, really hard to not only give him his services and address him as where he was, but also making sure that he knew he knew that they knew that he was capable, because kids do pick up on whether the adults around them believe they have capacity. they
Yep.
they they understand, and kids a lot of times, my experience as an educator is that they will rise to whatever standard you set. If your standards for your classroom are low, that's where your kids are going to be. But if you tell them, oh well, I have, because I am that teacher, I will tell them, I have high expectations of you. There is no reason why everyone in this class can't be a millionaire reader. There's no reason why everyone in this class can't have perfect attendance and can't do certain things. I think not just in public school, but just in society in general, it just seems like right now we're lacking that push for kids to tell them that,
Yeah.
yeah, it could be hard for a second, but you can do it. I feel like a lot of times they're given more so the green light, the okay to like putter out and say that they're done. Um, and everybody wants a participation award or trophy. And our generation was not raised like that. And I think
Yeah.
definitely every child deserves to be acknowledged in some way. But I also think it's important to ensure that they're getting pushed, and that they're told that this is where you are, but this is where you could go. And I think that that's a piece that's missing. And when you have somebody making these statements like RFK is making, you're saying that it's very, very unlikely that these children can do anything. And so I pulled up on the CDC what the symptoms are of autism or characteristics of autism, and then we can talk about what he said. So, some of the characteristics they have. It says signs and symptoms. This is from the CDC.gov. It says social communication, interaction skills can be challenging for people with ASD. Examples of social communication and social interaction characteristics related to ASD can include avoids or does not keep eye contact, does not respond to name by 9 months of age. Notice it said 9 months, and RFK was saying 2 years. Does not show facial expressions such as happy, sad, angry, and surprised by 9 months of age. Does not play simple interactive games like pat a cake by 12 months of age. Uses few or no gestures by 12 months of age. For example, does not wave goodbye. Does not share interest with others by 15 months of age. For example, shows you an object they like. Does not point to show you something interesting by 18 months of age. Does not notice when others are hurt or upset by 24 months, 2 years of age. Does not notice other children and join them in play by 36 months, 3 years of age. Does not pretend to be something else. And for those of you who don't have an educational background, that's a big part of like 3K, 4K is what they call dramatic play. And that's when they try to do things like they might pretend to be cooking, they might pretend they're on the telephone or they're doctors. So those types of things. So does not pretend to be something else like a teacher or superhero during play by 48 months, 4 years of age. Does not sing, dance, or act for you by 60 months, 5 years of age. It also says that people with ASD have behaviors or interests that can seem unusual. These behaviors of interest set ASD apart from conditions defined by problems with social communication interaction only. Some examples of restrictive or repetitive behaviors and interests related to ASD can include lining up toys or other objects and getting upset when the orders change, repeating words or phrases, which is echolalia, playing with the same toys the same way every time, focus on parts of the objects such as wheels, getting upset by minor changes. And for many of us in the classroom, we know they need a lot of consistency in their routine and schedule. If you change it, they get upset. Have obsessive interests, must follow certain routines, flap their hands, rock their body, or spin themselves in circles. We know that's a lot of self-soothing is part of what they're doing. Is also them, some may call it stimming. Has unusual reactions to the way things sound, smell, taste, look, or feel. And other characteristics: delayed language skills, delayed movement, delayed cognitive or learning skills. I think a key word is delayed, not non-existent, which is what he made it seem like they would never develop it. Hyperactive, impulsive, and or inattentive behavior. Some may have epilepsy or seizure disorder, unusual eating and sleeping habits, GI issues, for example, constipation, unusual mood or emotional reactions, anxiety, stress, or excessive worry, lack of fear or more fear than expected. And it says it is important to note that children with ASD may not have all or any of the behaviors listed as examples here. So even though that list was quite exhaustive, they may not have
Yep.
anything that's on this list. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
just the fact that he's over, Health and Human Services, and that's on the CDC website, and it looks like he's never read it. It's
yeah.
interesting.
And the way he talks about it too, he's like, we're going to find the cause of autism.
Right.
Well, I mean, you're kind of assuming that there's only one cause.
Right. Because he
Like,
wants to say this, he really wants to say it's vaccines. And then because he
oh,
has some anti-vaxxer tendencies, and that's dangerous too. We know there's a whole epidemic in Texas right now with measles, which are totally preventable. But if you have a large swath of people who are viewed as experts on the issue, telling people that, getting the vaccine is dangerous. And some people are listening to that, and their children are catching this disease and they're getting really, really sick and they're getting hospitalized.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a disease that we defeated already.
Allegedly, but we brought it back because it was so much fun.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
But now I heard, and I don't know how true this is, I haven't verified it, but a lot of the I guess Amish and Mennonite
Mm-hmm.
communities that it was the non-vaccine thing was a big trend with them. So it's really hitting
Yeah.
them especially hard.
Mm-hmm. And some people are actually, it's funny that you brought that community up because some people are trying to use them as an example of a community that doesn't have autism because they want to say that like it's the food, it's the beverages, it's the vaccines that are causing the autism, but they're not screening for it. They're not
Oh,
screening for it.
in that community. So of course you're not
Yes.
gonna it's kind of like
Right.
Trump saying, yeah, don't test for COVID.
Right. Right.
And the numbers will go down. I mean, it's just so
Exactly. Exactly.
ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. But they're not doing that. So, it's a misnomer, well, it's a misrepresentation rather to say, oh, well, there's no autism in those types of communities. It's everywhere. And I think even I've heard some people even say like, when you think back on, kids when we were younger, we can see that they had those characteristics, but autism wasn't a term that was used frequently. I can think of like one of my classmates, he was very much to himself, very socially awkward, very, very bright, but quirky would be the nicest way to put it. And then as
Yeah,
an adult looking back, I'm like, oh, that person had autism. That person definitely had autism, but it wasn't something that we were aware of. I think even I'm very appreciative of even like Sesame Street. Maybe that's what RFK needs to watch. Maybe he needs to watch some Sesame Street.
yeah.
Um,
Let's take it all the way down to that level. I think,
Right. Oh yeah, because they're trying to get rid of that too. But thank you, Netflix, for saving Sesame Street. But
yeah,
um, because they've got Julia, which is their first autistic character, and I used it to explain it to my class, because my son was in my classroom and he was repeating something over and over and over again, and they thought it was wildly hilarious because they're second graders. So why wouldn't it be funny, And so I had to say, hey, you guys, let's watch this clip and let's see this. I was like, so this is what this means, and it doesn't necessarily mean they're not smart or anything, but they just kind of fixate sometimes. And I promise my little second graders, we watched a little video about Julia, and then after that, every time my son came in my room, when I say it does not matter what that little boy was doing, they were all like all over him, loving on him, making sure he was comfortable and he had everything he needed. Like he pretty much belonged to my class. I think that's just just an easy way to show how much education and empathy can get us. And I wish we could see more of that in adults and not just seeing it in children.
Yeah.
And I'm concerned about people trying to take certain, literature and different things out of the classroom because those things are there because they build empathy and they build understanding of people who are not quite like us. And it's needed.
Yeah, it really is. And just to see somebody in charge like
Yeah.
Mr. Kennedy, and it's just terrifying. And then all the cuts that they're making to Medicaid and Medicare, it's obviously going to limit the amount of care that our autistic community can get. So, I mean, what is the end game with him?
Oh,
Because even if he finds the cause of it, I mean, we're cutting all these services and supports and access to medical care. So what is the actual end game? I just don't understand where we're going with this.
I think that's a great question. And honestly, with you saying that, I'm going to have to make it very localized, but this is making me think about when they closed State Hospital in Milledgeville.
Yeah,
So, for people who may be watching from another city or another state, there was a state hospital in Milledgeville, which was for people who had mental health issues. When they decided they were going to close all the mental health institutions, that was one of them. They closed it. And so you have these people in that community. That doesn't mean that their problems went away. They still have those same issues, but now they don't have help, you
right.
know, and it just, you wonder how many people, ended up homeless or ended up in jail or ended up somewhere because that was taken away. And I understand that there were some abuses and things that were happening in mental health institutions, which is why they shuttered them. But what do they say? You don't have to necessarily throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like something else should have been put in place, or either more protections and rights for those people to have, because a lot of people who are currently homeless, they have mental health issues. And so then like you were saying, with people with autism, or if their parents suspect they have autism, one of the big things Temple Grandin always said was like early intervention. And most people who are aware of it will say early intervention is key. So what do we mean when we say early intervention? Putting them in speech therapy, putting them in physical therapy, because they do have those delayed motor skills and the delayed speech. But if you're taking those opportunities away and they're not getting that help, especially at an early age when it's most effective, later on you could be limiting their opportunities for employment, for higher education, for these types of things, because they won't have the words to even be able to advocate for themselves. And I feel like it's almost like if he has his way, it would be basically like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because you're making people afraid of being diagnosed, as you said. They would be then afraid of getting if you're not going to get diagnosed, and you're probably not going to get those services that you need to help you grow through the challenges related with ASD. And so, what does that make your future like as an adult? To me, it seems like he's trying to make that a reality, to make it a negative thing. And I don't mean any harm, but it's my understanding that Kennedys lobotomized one of their family members. I think his aunt was lobotomized because she had a learning disability, and that was something they decided that their father decided that he was going to do, and it had negative impacts on her for the rest of her life. I just I just feel like it's very concerning to be making differences amongst people and to be making choices for people.
Yeah,
And
because I see this going two ways. Either the eugenics route where they start sterilizing them so they can't reproduce,
mhm,
um, or we're people are just going to walk around with autism and we're just going to pretend like they don't have it and they don't need anything. I mean,
right.
and then these people are going to be pushed into prisons. I don't, the end game just isn't entirely clear to me. It's
Right. And
crazy.
I think one of the things, if you know, somebody's at home and they're watching, they're like, well, how could somebody with autism end up in prison? I think like if you end up in a, if that person were to end up in a situation where they're overly stimulated and they have like a negative response, like maybe they'll scream, maybe, you know, maybe they'll try to get out of the situation and make a spectacle of themselves. I mean, because if they're not taught how to self-regulate and aren't given those tools, that is something that could happen. Um, and that would be really, really unfortunate because it's literally just they're having a moment where they're overly stimulated, but it's being
Yeah.
viewed a different way. Like I'll give an example. This child does not have autism by any stretch of the imagination, but one of my colleagues had a student in his class, and the child has an anger issue and would just like explode, scream. You could hear that child at the other in the hallway. And I pulled the child aside and said, I'm worried about you. I said, because when you get angry like that, nobody can rationalize with you. And at school, we're equipped to deal with you. But if you go outside of these four walls, somebody may misinterpret that and you might end up somewhere you don't want to be because because you're so angry and you're having this explosive response. If someone views you as a danger to yourself or a danger to others, it could change,
Yeah.
you know, how your day and maybe beyond is going to look, is the nicest possible way I can put it.
Yeah. And they do need to learn those self-regulation skills and stuff. But you know, that also brings up um the issue of masking. Are we going to start seeing
Yeah.
masking now more because you don't want to be stigmatized or be on this list?
Yeah. And how exhausting that would be. So for people who are watching, if you're not aware of masking, it's like basically where a neurodivergent person will mimic what a neurotypical person would do or say so that they don't stand out as being neurodivergent. And
Yeah.
it's like all those things too, I hate to get like religious, but I don't know another way about it. But everybody was uniquely and wonderfully made. No one person is just like another person. And when you're putting people in these, making them feel like they're under a microscope for being who they were made to be, then you're taking away from the opportunities they have to bless other people by just simply being themselves.
Yeah. Agree. Absolutely. 100%. But you know, I'm curious to see what some of these disability organizations, how they're going to push back on this if they push for this list. Um, I do hope they step up, but you know, I've got a feeling that these are just strange, strange times. I think the very organizations that are going to stand up for people with autism or disabilities in general, their funding is probably going to be cut. I mean, we've already
Right.
seen it um, with a lot of these agencies already. I mean, and even with the CDC, they've cut funding there too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very strange.
I literally, but you know, I told you I was coming back from Sandy Springs this afternoon. I was literally at a retreat, and there were two or three women there who work for the CDC, and they were saying how there are things they cannot say, they cannot do at work, and different people are, you know, losing their jobs. So I think it's definitely you know, concerning, and people need to be aware that it's not just talk that's going on. Like people are actually losing their jobs and losing different things um, with all these cutbacks and different things. I'm trying to look and see though. I see that the ACLU um, has an autistic self-advocacy network. It says oh, excuse me, and it says and 80 other disability rights, civil rights, and public health organizations. They sent a letter to Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy, raising significant concerns with the proposal to create the National Registry. And this was on May 12th, so not that long ago. That was like 2 weeks ago. So they sent, so I mean, 80 organizations, that's a lot. And it just says the letter outlines the many unanswered questions, and I'm reading this from the ACLU website. The letter outlines the many unanswered questions left by NIH's data platform proposal, including what data it will collect, what sources it will rely on, how it will anonymize or how to make it anonymous and secure the data. It also highlights the increased risk of surveillance, as you said, stigmatization
Yeah.
and marginalization from the data collection, particularly for disabled people who have a long and troubled history with government efforts to find and track disability for the purpose of eliminating it. So it says the three key steps they're asking NIH and HHS to take are meaningful communication with autistic people and advocates, fundamental privacy safeguards to prevent misuse and abuse, and ensuring that the data platform advances the well-being of autistic people, people with disabilities, and the public health while minimizing potential harms. I'm going to tell you, honestly, reading this, and it might sound crazy. Why did this make me think about X-Men? Because they wanted the mutants, they were different, they were gifted, they were different. I mean, they wanted the list, they wanted everybody to go collect it. That's what it's feeling like.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. I hadn't
mean,
thought about that, but that's a really good analogy. That
yeah,
is
that's
a
what it
really
made me
good
think
analogy.
of. And I think that's the only way like I could think about like relating it to people who are not like big history buffs, who may not know what all was, involved with World War II, but that's something that like people now can look at and say, "Oh, I've seen that movie," and think about it. Or even what's the I'm trying to think about the movie. Was it Divergent? I can't remember what it was. I think it was Divergent, where everybody was supposed to be in a different faction. They were only supposed to have like one gift, but if you had multiple gifts, you were like outcasted. Just all these different types of things. There's so again, that goes to literature, and they want to be in literature, but it goes back to being aware that there's nothing new under the sun. There have been people, over centuries and centuries who have tried to like separate and divide. And that was one of the things at the retreat that was said, like that I went to. They said, God is not a God of division. Division doesn't come for him. He calls for us to be in union together, to work together, and to love one another. And I think that
Yep.
that's where we have to move going forward. But I don't know. I don't know how I would teach RFK Jr. about love. I don't know, uh, uh, you know, how to get him to that place. Because I'm just looking at, I just know for me as a teacher and a parent, I just hearing registry, it just immediately made me think about the list of people with all the Jewish people on in World War II. I've been to Amsterdam. I've been inside the Anne Frank house. And when you walk into that house, there is a palpable feeling of grief and sorrow. And you think about a family hiding in an attic for months upon months just for being who they are, and then
Yeah. Yeah.
still being captured, still being put to death just for being themselves. And that was for a religion.
Yeah. It,
And you can, to a certain extent, yes, you can be a religion by birth, but you also can be in a religion by choice. A child does not choose to be autistic. They don't choose ASD. It's not caused by the environment or the food and everything like he wants to say, or the vaccines. That is just as simple as just like a child being diagnosed as diabetic, you know, or being I don't know, diagnosed as asthmatic. It just is.
yeah.
And they shouldn't be treated differently because of it.
And I know that there are disability organizations that I'm sure are going to step up and try to advocate them for their legal rights. But my thing is, what do you do with um, people who are just lawless? Because we're seeing this with, um, immigrants.
They're being taken
Yeah, I
and
mean,
sent to, El Salvador and other places just because. And
there are
even
court
and
orders.
even an American has been sent there, maybe, and that's probably not the only one. That's the one that we know of.
Yeah. And so if you've got, I mean, you've got the law, but if courts are issuing orders and
They're
they're not
being
following it,
ignored.
they're being ignored. I mean, that's scary to
I
me.
mean, it is
Um,
scary. I'm not shocked by it at all. And again, this is just a teacher of me because I taught third grade forever. And one of the main things that we teach the structure of government. We teach, legislative, executive, and judicial branches of government and what each part is. We also teach local, state, and national, so they know the levels and they know the branches of the government. And the whole job that we explain to the children of the executive branch is to enforce the law. And so when you ask someone who's been convicted of 32 felonies to enforce the law,
yeah,
I'm just saying I'm not surprised about what's happening. And it's hard to explain even as an educator, like, you know, I I'm at a loss. Like I used to use CNN 10 in my classroom because it's kind of like what Channel One used to be for my generation. It would be like 10 minutes of like um objective news about around the world and the country, everything. I don't even bother anymore because up is down and left is right right
yeah,
now.
yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know. I think that will be the job of the legislative branch. I feel like the judiciary is doing their part. Like you said, they're putting in different actions and everything like that. But the legislative branch, I think they need to put some more laws and things in place to kind of try to stop some of these things that are going through, or if they are laws, I mean, come up with ways to try to, I mean, I don't know how you compel someone to follow the law who has a history of breaking. I honestly don't. But
Yeah,
that brings
for
me
sure.
to the question that Brandon asked before we started when he was talking about like World War II, how they had the registry for the people who were Japanese and everything like that, Japanese American. So, wondering if they are going to try to pull up some of these older laws or practices that they did and try to bring them back. And if was there ever anything put in place to kind of combat that and go against that? So people
Yeah.
can protect themselves and protect their data.
I mean, it kind of looks like that's where we're heading. And I hate to be alarmist about it or maybe overreact, but I really don't think I am. I mean, stuff like this has happened in the past before. And so
Yeah.
when you see it, I mean, you kind of recognize where this is headed.
Oh, we're on the
But
list. America's on the list of I think I can't remember. It's not the UN, but there's it's a list of like countries at risk of fascism, and
mhm,
that we're right there.
yeah. But I don't know. Don't come after my autistic kid. That they
No,
would have a very big problem on their hands. I mean, we love our autistic kids.
we love all our kids, but it's just I
Yeah,
don't know. Mm,
yeah.
I'm looking to see. I was trying to see if I could find where we ended up on the list for being at risk of fascism. But I think just it sounds like there really isn't much we can do in terms of this list. But it basically seems like in terms of addressing the autism registry, it does violate HIPAA. We've discussed that.
Yeah.
If they go into the school district, it will violate FERPA. We've discussed that. And the courts, it will be the judges and the courts who would have to defend that. Um, and we're going to have to heavily depend on these advocacy groups to, I guess, lead the charge and being proactive and going against these types of things. And I
But
guess just prepare. You said
I
what,
feel
April?
I feel like there's a certain segment of the population that's buying into this whole registry is a good thing. Um, I've even seen it on a few people on TikTok that are saying, yes, this is a great thing to have this registry so we can research
Well, you
autism more.
know what? I think then we should make it volunteer. Maybe if they feel like that, make it a voluntary thing and treat it like a if they want to do that, treat it like a
Trial.
medical study
Yeah,
because they have medical studies where people volunteer and they say they want to be studied and they go from there. But I think the biggest concern is not only is it doesn't seem like it's voluntary, it also is focused on children who cannot give consent to that anyway.
right,
It would have
right.
to be their parent who gives consent.
And I mean, who knows? Maybe, um, but I'm thinking there's like vol- voluntary ways to get the job done if the goal really is to study autism, because people can donate their body to science if they're
Yep,
autistic.
they could.
There's and they could donate or volunteer for studies, just like you know people in clinical trials. They
Exactly.
they don't have to have a registry, and I on some level I have to believe that they know that. So
Yeah.
what are they really up to?
I don't even know if you know what, we probably need to sit and read Project 2025 to know what the next step is. I don't think I want to read it. I feel like I'm living enough through it right now. I think I'd rather brace for this surprise. Um, but I think definitely being alert and paying attention and trying to get involved with maybe some of these groups like the ACLU and some of these other groups that are fighting for the rights of individuals with disability would probably be a good place for families to start if they're concerned about the autism registry. And if they don't want to maybe join some of these groups, most of these groups happily take donations to pay for different things, to
Absolutely.
pay for legal defenses, to get great attorneys like April Kelly Neal to make sure that children are being represented and their rights are not being violated. So I guess that's the conclusion. The conclusion is get on board with other people who have the same mindset in protecting that data and contribute to them if possible, staying aware and knowing your rights in terms of FERPA and HIPAA.
Yep.
And I guess holding them accountable, it would probably be at a place where you would have to hold your doctor's office accountable when I think about like that privacy right form that you fill out and holding them accountable. And then they would have to probably be the group to actually go after the government entities requesting it, is probably what it would have to be.
Yeah.
Because if they're compelled, they're compelled, but you still signed off that you trusted them with your information because you expected them to keep it private and to protect that information.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
I don't want it to be interesting, but it seems like that's the route.
Yeah.
Well, April Kelly Neal, is there anything else you think that people should know um, as we await to see what Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Does and what this what else could happen moving forward?
Um, I would just say, stay alert.
Stay alert.
Stay alert and just watch, because yeah,
I want to add to what
just
you're saying. I think not just watch, because remember I told you someone told me, oh, they're not doing that anymore. Be wary of mis and disinformation, because I was on a
yes,
call for parent advocates, and we were talking literally about this registry and how concerned we were. And then someone said, oh, they're not doing it anymore. They popped out today and said they're rolling it back. Well, that was on one website, which was probably by someone who's a proponent of, you know, RFK and those types of people who put that one thing up so it would pop up first thing when you do an internet search. But then if you keep going and you keep going, like all the major news outlets like CBS, um, what is it, PBS, all the major ones, they still had it top of the list that it was still a concern. It was still proposed by him. It hasn't gone anywhere. So even if you look and see and it says that it's no longer, I would look for it to be confirmed through multiple well-known websites of well-known newspapers and television networks. I wouldn't just say, "Oh, I saw this and it said it was gone." No, because I could probably do a search right now and it'll come up. Let's see.
yeah, you're right. We've got to question everything we hear now.
And that is something we have to be very, very mindful of, because even on the first one says HHS walks back Autism Registry is the first one, and it pops up on the autisticadvocacy.org website. But then when you look down, there's still more and more articles. It's just it just keeps going. Let's see.
Yeah, but even if they get rid or say they're not going to do the registry, well, then what are they going to do? Because they're not going to give up on this. And I think we're a little over time, but anyway,
Yeah.
this is a conversation, and we need to
Yeah.
keep it going.
Well, I guess we'll have to wait and watch.
Yeah, definitely, and question everything, like you said,
Yes.
because there's a lot of misinformation out there, a lot.
Yes. And even if you get it from like a family member or a friend, I still would look behind it, because sometimes they're getting, mis or disinformation, and they're recirculating it, and they don't know that it's not true. They don't know
Yep,
it's not true. And that's the whole purpose of having that type of information out there, is to cause confusion, is to cause more questions, is to make you think that something you shouldn't be worried about something when in fact it still should be front of mind. So I think definitely that I hope that we don't have to have a follow-up conversation about a registry getting built and legal action going beyond that. I hope that the next conversation we have, it will be about this proposed registry, how it was shot down, what laws were used and cited in court, what precedents were used and cited in court to shut it down, and how they're going to prevent that from coming up further, because everyone is entitled to privacy. Everyone is entitled to have their medical records be between them and their doctor only. And we need to keep it that way. And same thing with the school. Their school records should be between them and the child and the family. That's it. In the school.
that's it. Absolutely.
So be mindful, know your rights. And if you're ever uncertain about your educational rights, you can always reach out to April Kelly Neal Esquire. She's an excellent resource in Middle Georgia, and she is an advocate for children, especially children who may have autism. So
Well, thank you, Miss Long, for that shout
thank
out.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thank
And
you.
you do
And
great
I
work too.
appreciate you being a twice exceptional mom as well.
Yeah, we got to stick together. We'll fight it
Yes.
out.
Yes, Sam. Well, thank you so much. And April Kelly Neal, I love saying your whole name together. It flows very well. It just gives me all my Southern vibes. April Kelly Neal. Um, Esquire. So thank you for coming on today, and thank you for those of you who joined and watched us live. If you're watching it later, we hope that you learned something new, and remember to keep advocating for yourself and your exception learner and know your rights.
Yes, thank you. Y'all have a great evening, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you.